Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hi, welcome brothers and sisters to this workshop, which is on the dynamics of public speaking from an Islamic perspective. How many of you, when you are requested to speak in public, get this type of feeling? How many of you? How many of you? Raise your hands. And the rest of you are quite confident in speaking in public. If you are, then we can test you all just now.
No.
Yes?
No.
Great.
No, we are.
Huh?
Yeah.
Okay. So most of you will fall into this category. Okay. How many of you would like to be speaking clearly and dynamically as the late Sheikh Ahmed Deedat? How many of you? Inshallah. Now, just about myself slightly. I'm an advocate by profession. However, I'm no longer in practice. I have been in the legal fraternity for a number of years. I've been in Islamic banking. I'm running my own consultancy. I work closely with the corporates, with youth. I run the Islamic Finance Banking and Law program. I founded the Young Leaders Academy, authored a number of books, 2 on public speaking, and I'll be giving you your books in a moment. There's a public speaking academy that I run as well, and I do some motivational speaking. That's a little bit about myself. You are expected to read the questions from one chapter, say chapter 1, put the handbook aside, read the chapter in the book itself, put the book down, and try and answer the questions in the handbook. If you do that, you're going to be benefiting, inshallah, tremendously from this book and from the workshop that we're having. If you are not, then unfortunately you're just going to be wasting your time. So what this book covers is the following: preparing the presentation and structuring the contents. For those of you who give Jummah khutbahs, there's an entire chapter on it, effective use of Jummah khutbah, and things to remember. So these are the 8 chapters that are covered in the book. This has a matter of interest. How many of you give talks in the masajid, whether it's a Jummah khutbah or any other occasion? Just raise your hands, please. Quite a few. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Among the sisters, anyone? No. Okay, so you will find also this chapter very, very useful. Now what we will be covering, inshallah, today, or what I normally cover in the 2-day presentation, is the following: just some introductory remarks, then structuring the contents of your speech or presentation, overcoming nervousness, some miscellaneous points. Then I do demonstrations. I normally do the presentations to a colleague of mine. His name is Brother Idris Khamisa. All of us have authored this book together. So we do demonstrations. We get the participants to demonstrate also. Then you spend a fair amount of time on the A to Z of public speaking, taking you from the beginning right till the end of public speaking in detail. Now we will not have time even to start off with A of the A to Z. So important topics, what I've decided to do, I've included them in your some miscellaneous points. This workshop is going to be very interactive. I'm going to be asking you a fair number of questions. And if you have any questions, queries, comments, please just raise your hand and I'll take your questions as well. So there's quite a few things that I will not be able to cover, but if there's something that you feel is of interest to you, importance to you, please ask me the questions. The highlight of the 2-day presentation normally is our Holy Prophet Muhammad ﷺ's farewell sermon, which is the greatest speech ever given. And we do a full analysis of it, and there is this farewell sermon is in your book. I'll find it for you. And we do an analysis as well, and the entire analysis is in the book as well. So in your own time you can go through it, and you'll notice that almost everything, in fact everything and much more that the Western authors on public speaking have included in their hundreds of books, you'll find it in the life of Nabi Muhammad ﷺ. Everything. When I wrote the first book, it was a very small book, about 35 pages, about this size, on the art of public speaking, and I got my material from Western authors. And then I decided, let me see what the Sharia has to say about public speaking. And I started looking in the Quran and the Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and I was amazed. In fact, the amount of information there is in his life, in his seerah, on public speaking is phenomenal. It is as if the West has taken everything from the Sharia, put it in their books, packaged it nicely, and given it to us, and that is what we are using. So this book that you've got, alhamdulillah, is a unique book because it looks at public speaking from an Islamic perspective. So everything that you'll see in the Western books on public speaking, but a number of examples from the life of Nabi Muhammad ﷺ and also from the Quran Sharif. And during the course of today's presentations, I'll give you a number of those examples as well. Right? So this is something that we cover, the farewell sermon, and again demonstrations. What we normally do with the demonstrations is after speaking, giving the participants some information about public speaking, and then we get them to come forward and very short presentations, 3-4 minutes or 2 minutes, just to speak. So we see what are the positives and negatives of the person who's speaking, and we try and correct the person. And the audience also get an opportunity to see how people are speaking, and also to be able to crit them, to evaluate them. And in that way, they also improve their own. If we have time, I might get a few of you to stand in front. If not, then I have some video clips to show you of excellent speakers in the world, and also of Sheikh Ahmed Deedat. Inshallah, time permitting, I'll show you some of them. So we've got quite a lot to cover. Are you excited about it? Are you excited? MashaAllah. No one is born an eloquent speaker. The people who you see in the world speaking eloquently, dynamically, they were not born eloquent speakers. They all had to put in a lot of hard work in order to reach where they have reached. And there's no reason why we, all of us, cannot also become dynamic speakers. When you see a speaker who is dynamic, who grabs your attention, gets the message across to you, I like to compare it to an iceberg. The iceberg, what percentage do you think of the iceberg do you normally see above the water? Iceberg you see above the water and below the water. What percentage do you think you are able to see above the water of the entire iceberg? What percentage? 30%? Anyone else? 25? 10%. Not more than 10% on the average you'll see. So what you see is only 10% of the iceberg. The bigger part of the iceberg is below the water that you don't see. When you see a competent speaker or a competent person in any field, all you are seeing is the top of the iceberg. What you don't see is the 90%. All the hard work that has gone in, years of sacrifice, sweat, all the mistakes they've made, all the trials, tribulations, all the long hours they've spent. And after doing all that, what you then notice is just the top of the iceberg. So even when you notice efficient, eloquent public speakers, just bear in mind that no one was born an eloquent speaker, right? Lots of hard work goes into it. So, no one is born an eloquent speaker. It is an art that can be learned and mastered by anyone. It just requires effort. Now, you have been here now for the past 2 or 3 weeks. You've learned a lot about da'wah, about comparative religion, etc. So you've got contents. But it's pointless having contents if you are unable to pass the message across. Do you agree with that? Yes. Otherwise, the contents you're just going to be having to yourself, or you won't be able to get through. So the purpose of today's presentation, just to give you an inkling, an idea of some of the things that you can learn in order to get this powerful message of Islam across. And that's the purpose of us. Da'is, the job of a da'i is to get the important message across. So, it is an art that can be learned and mastered. When Hazrat Uthman, radiallahu anhu, when he was appointed the Khalifa, one of the first things he mentioned when he was delivering his speech was, "Oh people, the first rung of the ladder is most difficult, and there will still be many more days to come after this one. If I live longer, you shall have lectures that are properly prepared. Although we have never been speakers, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shall soon teach us." So the Khulafa al-Rashidun, were they born powerful public speakers? Were they? No. Hazrat Uthman, this is what he said the first time he stood up to speak. I don't know how to speak. Right? I'm going to make mistakes. But inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will teach us. So that's where we are at the moment. Some of us are proficient speakers, some of us are trying to get there, but this is something that we were staying by, right? Now the question arises, whose method should we follow? There's no doubt whose method we should be following, right? Because it is stated, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. Indeed, in the Messenger of Allah, there is a best of examples. So we don't have to look anywhere else as far as public speaking is concerned, or anything else for that matter. Nabi Muhammad testifies to his own eloquence when he says, I have been given the keys of eloquent speech and given victory with awe cast into the hearts of the enemy. So, our beloved Prophet he himself is saying, if you want to see an eloquent speaker, look at my life. Right? So there's no other reason for us to look anywhere else. He also stated that I am the greatest orator among the Arabs. Okay? And there's a hadith also, إِنَّمَا بُعِثْتُ مُعَلِّمًا. I am sent as a teacher. Right, so is there any reason for us to look anywhere else? No reason whatsoever. Whatever we want to know about public speaking or anything else in that matter, we find it in the life of our Prophet ﷺ. What was Prophet ﷺ's way of speaking? Okay, let's get some of you contributing now. From what you have read, from what you have heard over the years, can you tell us something about what you know about how our Prophet spoke? Anything? Yes, brother? He used to praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala before he spoke, when he started, correct? Clear and precise, correct?
Soft voice.
Soft voice, not always, but we'll discuss that. Never harsh to the people, correct? Seek protection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from shaitan, because that whispering is always going to be there, especially for a da'i. Whispering will always be there.
Short sentence, but a lot of meanings.
Short sentences, few words, but deep meaning, correct? Anyone else?
He used to speak in a language that people understand.
Absolutely, correct?
Sometimes he used to repeat, for example, the statement for the people to understand.
How many times was he repeating the statements, generally?
3 times.
Correct? Anyone else?
And something like when you're speaking, so you try to understand the audience.
Correct. We must know who the audience is and speak at their level. Anyone else? Sisters are very quiet. Sisters are not going to get away today.
He used to speak according to the situation.
Speak according to the situation, correct? Anyone else? How are the sisters doing? Asma, Sister Asma, Aisha, Amina. From what you read in the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, any comments about how he spoke?
He was able to convey emotions,
Correct.
feelings.
Correct. He spoke with emotion. Okay. In fact, you know quite a lot about Nabi Muhammad ﷺ, the way he spoke. But let's just have a look at a few, but I will be giving you practical examples of this as well. His speech has been described as so sweet and lucid that it sank into the depths of the hearts of those who were listening and captured their souls. It was clearly spaced so that anybody wishing to count the number of words would easily be able to do so. This is what Aisha has stated, that when Nabi Muhammad spoke, he spoke clearly, slowly, so if anyone in the audience even wanted to count how many words were used, he was able to count it. It was not so fast that it could not be retained, nor was it so slow that it would be difficult to make sense of what was being said. In short, it was precise, perfect in every sense. When teaching someone, Nabi Muhammad ﷺ used to choose the most beautiful and best methodologies. He chose methodologies that had the greatest effect on the heart of his addressees, that were closest to the level of understanding and intellect, and the most helpful in making things clear to them. At times, Prophet ﷺ used to present a doubt in the minds of the audience to provide an answer to it. So he's asked a question, leave them guessing what the answer is, and then he used to provide the answer. He would resort to joking at times in what he was teaching. So he was not always serious, and I'll give you examples of this. Would introduce what he wanted to teach or explain with a subtle introduction. He just gives a few words, introduce the topic, and then continue. Would make a comparison between things. Quite often you'll see in his speeches, in his hadith, you'll find that he was comparing one thing to the other. And I'll give you examples of this as well, inshallah. He would ask his Sahaba, Ridwanullahi ta'ala ajma'een, questions despite knowing the answer himself in order to test them. Isn't that so? Continuously used to ask questions. He would ask them in order to guide them to the place where they would get the answer. Right? He would apportion some of his lessons specifically for the women and teach them whatever knowledge they needed. So he used to have special sessions, halqa for the females, and then he used to inform them what they needed to know as well. He would take into consideration the state of the children, the youth who were present, and their level of understanding. In fact, he was so considerate that even if he was in salah, and if he heard a child crying, he used to shorten his salah so that he wouldn't inconvenience that mother because of the crying child. This is how considerate he was. Okay, so alhamdulillah, most of you have mentioned how Prophet ﷺ spoke, but we'll be going into the details in a moment. Now, what's very important is why is it necessary for us to learn eloquent in speech, good proficiency in speech? What's the reason for it? Can anyone tell me? Why is it? Why should we know how to speak well? I mentioned it to you already earlier. Why?
Across to the audience.
The message could get across to the audience, correct? Why else?
It was for the same answer, to make sure that the message go through and is understood and you touch the audience.
Correct. The message must get through and you must touch the hearts of the audience. Anyone else? Yes, brother?
The audience should be kept in that motivation to hear even more.
The audience should be motivated all the time. Okay, so these are some of the things. The main reason is what we had mentioned earlier. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Udu'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmati wal maw'izati al-hasana wajadilhum billati hiya ahsan. Inna rabbaka huwa a'lamu biman dalla an sabilihi wa huwa a'lamu bil muhtadin. This is the crux, the foundation of why we should learn proficiency in speaking. Invite mankind, O Muhammad, to the way of your Rabb with wisdom, bil hikmah, with wisdom and beautiful preaching, and argue with them in a way that is better. Truly your Rabb knows best who has gone astray from his path, and he is the best aware of those who are guided. So this is the reason why we learn proficiency in speaking. There's no other reason. So that we can invite people to the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with wisdom and beautiful preaching. And if there's going to be debates, there's going to be arguments, there's going to be discussions, it should be done in the best of ways. That's the reason why we learn. Do we agree with that? No other reason, no ulterior motive. No one must be there to say, okay, I'm such a great speaker, and then I get all the accolades, and I tap on my shoulder and I feel my ego gets bloated. That's not the reason. Because actually we are warned by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam about what will happen if that is the intention with which we learn eloquence in speech. When we speak, especially those who are ulama or those who speak in masjid, etc., and we do lots of presentations to the ulama as well as to in the Darul Ulooms to the senior alim students nationally. And what we always tell them is the importance of time, the importance of the audience's time. It is one of the most valuable commodities that anyone can have. Why should anyone give you their time? Why? Why should you give me your time? Your time is the most valuable commodity that you have, right? After Iman. So why should you give it? So you must bear in mind that when you are speaking, whether it's Jummah khutbahs or whether it's going to be in any of these other presentations you're going to do to Muslims and non-Muslims alike, time is very valuable. It's an amana that you have in your hands. When I'm speaking to you, you've given me 3 hours of your valuable time, right? That's amana. I must make sure, firstly, that I'm thoroughly prepared before I come here, and secondly, I must be able to get through to you and see if there's any gaps in what I am saying and what you are listening and what you're understanding, that I try and assist you, right? So that is the amana. Some of the things I will be skipping because of time. The other thing, do we really know what our audiences think of us as speakers? And this, I ask all the ulama that we present to. Do we ever take the trouble, especially those of us who speak in Jummah khutbahs, do we take the trouble of asking the audience what they feel about our presentation? 7 or 8 of you who speak regularly or in Jummah khutbahs, how many of you ask your audience to crit you, to evaluate your speeches? Raise your hand, please. None of you. Right, that is our normal experience. Out of a group of 200 alims, maybe about 8 or 10 would go out of the way to ask the audience, how was my speech? Is there any way in which I could improve? Not in order to, for the ego, but to improve, right? So the reason why we ask for feedback is so that we can improve. So what you must do also, when you are giving a talk, wherever it is, get some of your friends. Ask them, please see how I'm speaking. Is there any way that I could be improving, right? In fact, in this book, at one of the sections we've got in the Jummah khutbah, we've even got an evaluation form. So make copies of it, give it to your friends, and ask them to evaluate you. People talk about our speeches when they are very good. What do you think they do when our speeches are bad? Do they talk or do they not talk? They talk, definitely they talk. And I've got examples to give, but I don't have time to go into that now. I'll give you one example. One of the reviews we got for this book, and we got a number of reviews for this from Sheikh Yusuf Islam. And he said that years ago, shortly after he embraced Islam, he went to a Jummah khutbah. It was delivered by Dr. Zaki Badawi. And his talk was on the need for Islamic schools. And he said that he was so motivated by the 20 or 30 minutes talk that he went and acted on it immediately. He opened up the first Islamic school in the UK that was recognized by the government. And today, do you know how many Islamic schools there are in the UK? Anyone take a guess? How many? How many? There's about 350 Islamic schools in the UK. Starting off from the one talk by the one sheikh, which had an effect on one man, and he went and implemented it, and there's tens of thousands of Muslims who have benefited from that. So who's going to get all that thawab? Who's going to get all that thawab? Sheikh Badawi. One man, because he got his message across, it penetrated the heart of even one Musalli there, and he took action. So we have got a very, very powerful medium, and the medium of lecturing, wherever it is, whether in schools, universities, madaris, darul ulooms, masjid, wherever it is, we've got a very, very powerful medium, and we must use it appropriately. And it could be our zariya for the hereafter, sadaqah jariyah. Sadaqah jariyah, ongoing charity. When we die, we hear there's only 3 things that will accompany us after we are gone. One is if we leave pious children who pray for us. Secondly, if we've got knowledge that we imparting to people which is of benefit to them, and as da'is, that is something that you do. And thirdly, recurring charity. So if you give money for a well or a student who's studying the Darul Uloom or wherever. So one of the 3 is imparting beneficial knowledge. So the knowledge that we acquire, especially dini knowledge, and we pass it on, that could become the door for us attaining Jannah. Right? So it's very, very important. Now, what intention should we have before we start speaking? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam stated that on the day of resurrection, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not accept repentance or ransom from him who learns excellence of speech to captivate thereby the hearts of men or of people. There's serious warnings about punishment for people who even try and do good, but their intention is not right. Right? So even when we are doing deen work, but if our intention is not for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then we're going to be having a problem. So what should our intention be in anything we do? And we're going to make that intention now. We should have made, I'm sure you probably made it when you came here. If you came with some other intention, or it wasn't this particular intention, then we can still make that intention now. I will listen attentively and try to understand what is being said. I will ask if I am not sure. That's the first thing. Even when you are in schools, in colleges, wherever you're lecturing, get your students to follow these three things. Firstly, to listen attentively. Secondly, I will practice upon what is being said, the object being to invite towards good, forbid evil, and seek the pleasure and nearness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Amal bil ma'ruf, nahya anil munkar. That must be our intention. So firstly, I must listen attentively and learn. Secondly, I must put it into practice. And thirdly, I must convey it to others. That must be our intention. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has stated, or Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has stated, that if one person gets guided on your hands, it is better for you than a red she-camel. It's very, very valuable in the time of the Sahaba, red she-camel. So this must be our intention in anything we do. So let's make that our intention now for today's workshop, as well as whatever has gone in these past 2 or 3 weeks. So the first intention, we must listen attentively. If we don't understand, we must ask questions. You'll have the email addresses of IPCI and the scholars who have lectured to you. Ask them questions if you don't fully understand. Secondly, we need to put it into practice. We will only learn if you put it into practice. As I mentioned earlier, if within 48 hours of something that you have learned, you have not put it into practice, you're going to lose it. Right? So you have to put it into practice. And thirdly, you need to convey it to others. I made a presentation some time ago. In fact, not to this particular person. Somewhere, I normally have this as part of my presentation on public speaking, but this book ended up in the hands of someone from Malawi. So this person contacted me about 3 weeks ago, and he said that we are using your book for a workshop that I'm conducting for a group of about 80 youth in Malawi. I hope you don't mind that I'm using parts of your book. And then what he said, and he quoted a particular page, and he said, I am following what you have said in your book. So after I read that message of his, and I opened that page to see now what he was talking about, and he was actually referring to this. I will practice upon what is being said, and I will convey it to others. So that is practicing immediately of what you read. So he read this book in his own time, and he decided I need to pass this message on. Right? So this must be our intention. Will this be our intention in anything we do? Inshallah? Inshallah. Okay. Now, one of the things we're going to be discussing is how do you structure the contents of your presentation? Whether it's a Jummah khutbah, whether it's a talk you're giving at schools, universities, anywhere. Even if it is a debate that you're going to be having, or the discussions on comparative religion or whatever. So how do we prepare our speech? Now there's a whole chapter on it, but I'll just summarize it for you. Okay? If you have any questions, please ask me as we go along. The first question I would ask you is, how much time do you normally spend when you're preparing your speeches? Or how much time do you think should be spent on preparing speeches? Right, those brothers who give talks regularly, how much time do you spend when you're giving your Jummah khutbah? Anyone? Yes, brother, how much time? Preparing for your speech. How much time should be spent in preparing for your speech?
Maybe around about 15 minutes.
50 minutes. Anyone else?
I think there is no specific time. It can depend on the knowledge you have on the subject and how fast it is.
How much time do you spend?
I think it can't be specific time.
More or less,
It can depend
on
on
the average,
2 hours.
2 hours. How much time you
At
spend?
least 5 days before the actual presentation.
5 days.
The day before.
The day before, 1 day. Anyone else? Yes, chef.
Well, I think normally for our Chuma, I
Yes.
normally start preparing from Monday. Because I
On
know
Monday
Friday.
for the Friday.
Yes.
So the entire week. On and off whenever you get time. Anyone else?
If it's I never done a speech, but outside of school. If I compare, if it was 1 hour speech, I would prepare at least maybe 10 hours.
You spend 10 hours to prepare for 1 hour speech. Is that too much time the sister is spending, or would you say that is the time that we should spend? What do you all think? She said that she would spend for the speech that she's giving in school 10 hours for 1 hour's speech. Do you think that's too much time? Or do you think that that is the time that should be spent? What do you think? Close to it. But how much time are you all spending? Hmm?
It depends on the person and the way you want to give the.
Okay, depend on your audience,
Yeah.
depend on the person himself, depend on various things. But I want to know, on the average, how much time would you spend?
I just want to give an answer depending on book on it called Outliers, written by Malcolm Gladwell. He said for somebody to be a genius in any field, you must have an average of 10,000 hours.
Okay, what you're talking about is to become an expert in any particular field.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what?
10,000 hours.
10,000 hours. Okay. No. It's like what the brother is saying, is, and that is what people say as well, if you want to become an expert in anything, then read books on that particular subject, various books. And they say that if you read about 5 to 8 books on a particular topic, you can become an expert on the topic. Okay, certain things you can't become an expert, you can't become a medical doctor by just reading books because practice is required. But that is the point that's made. So if you spend about 10,000 hours on it, you can become an expert on it. Okay. So how much time do proficient public speakers spend? They spend about 1 hour in preparation for each minute they're expected to speak. So if you're speaking for 60 minutes, 60 hours. That's the average. Some spend more than that. So if we are spending half an hour, 50 minutes, in fact, when I ask the ulama as well, some of them say we spend 3 hours, some of them 90 minutes, some of them 1 day, 3 days, 5 days for the Jummah khutbah, then you can imagine the amount of preparation you're putting into that. Obviously, it depends on the topic you're speaking on. Maybe you've spoken so often on that topic, you don't even have to prepare. Right, but I'm not referring to that. I'm talking about something that you're going to be preparing maybe for the first time and going and speaking. So this is the amount of time that's required. So when you are going and giving da'wah, especially when you're speaking to people of other faiths, and you must remember the people of other faiths, especially the priests and them, they are trained in public speaking. In their Darul Ulums, in their seminaries, they are trained. They've got experts teaching them how to speak. Compared to us, we go and stand there without any training. Unfortunately, that's why sometimes you see the difference between the standards of their eloquence and ours, generally. But this is the reason why, right? So we need to make a serious effort. Public speaking is serious. Da'wah is something serious. As we put effort into everything else, we need to put effort into our presentation as well. Do you agree with that? Agree with that? Alhamdulillah. Right, how do we structure the content? Just like when you're preparing an essay or something in school, there's 3 parts to any presentation. What are the 3 parts to a composition? Introduction, body, and conclusion. That's it. So that's how your speech must be. Whatever speech, right? So I'm not just talking about Jummah bayats, anything that you're going to be doing, even debates. So you have an opening, in the opening, you have to capture the audience's attention, grab their attention. If they become interested in the first few minutes, then you've got their attention. When is the height of anyone's attention during any particular speech? When are they most attentive to your speaking? When? At what stage of your presentation? In the beginning? And when else? Right, that's introduction, and when else? In the end. So you'll have the audience's attention the most in the beginning and at the end of your speech. So in the beginning, their attention span will be there. During the speech, it's going to go down, and depending on how interesting you are, it might go right down, might go to sleep, right? And then it will come up again, right at the end. So when you, in your opening, you have to grab their attention to something powerful, right? And keep them listening to you. And I'll give you examples of how you can grab their attention. And it must lead into your speech. Secondly, then we have the body. Now what we say in the body, don't have too many points, because then if you have too many points, then you just confuse the people, right? So you have about 3 or 4 points or 5 points, depending on what you're talking about, the main points. And then you have a sub point, and you have support material. So if you're speaking about, is the Bible the word of God? That's your topic. Right, now you say you've got 3 points that you're going to be making on this particular topic. Point 1, point 2, point 3. That's what you got. And point 1 now, what exactly are you going to mention there? I'm going to be mentioning the main point, and then I'm going to be adding some information there. There's going to be a sub point. And then I'm going to be having my support material. So I'm going to be quoting from the different Bibles that they are, etc., right? So that's your first point. Then you go on to your second point. And again, sub points, and then you've got the support material and so forth. So that's a simple way to do it. And thirdly, the conclusion. So conclusion, then you will be reviewing what you have spoken in your entire speech. You'll be summarizing, and you'll be calling to action, getting them to do something, like Yusuf Islam was called to do something. He took action, and we saw the result. Call to action or make a memorable statement. So this is simple, right? This is how your speech must be structured. Now the question arises quite often,